After the Chiefs were thoroughly defeated in the Super Bowl, General Manager Brett V will have no choice but to make the necessary changes to address the team's weaknesses. In today's video, I'll break down the adjustments the Chiefs need to make. But before we dive into that, let's take a moment to talk about some of the greatest quarterbacks who've struggled in the playoffs, as well as Travis Kelce's future. But first, let's take a moment to appreciate those unforgettable plays. Before I go into detail, a quick shout out to Rocket Money for sponsoring today's video. More on them later. Now, I want to share an interesting thought with all of you. What if I told you that the Chiefs' blowout loss in the Super Bowl could actually be better for the team in the long run than a close, nail-biting game? It might sound crazy at first, but after reading a tweet from Adam Best of Arrowhead Addict, I started to see his point. Let's imagine the Chiefs had lost a close game, say 35-38. A loss by just 3 points might have tempted the team to keep most of the roster intact, thinking they were just 1 or 2 plays away from securing the win. But the blowout, as painful as it was, made the team's weaknesses painfully obvious. Now, General Manager V has no choice but to address these flaws head-on. There's no more room for half measures like saying Joe Thuney could make do as a left tackle next season. No, the Chiefs need a solid left tackle. And if Thuney remains on the roster, he should be playing left guard. I'll dive into more specific needs in the video, but before that, I need to get something off my chest. Yes, we all know that the Super Bowl loss was tough, 40-6 with just 3 minutes left. But let's put things into perspective. Patrick Mahomes isn't the only legendary quarterback to struggle in the postseason. Yes, Mahomes didn't have his best game, and there were definitely areas where the coaches and offensive line failed him. He faced pressure on over 50% of his dropbacks and was sacked a career-high 6 times. But some people have been quick to blame Mahomes for this loss, and that's just not fair. Let's not forget, Mahomes has made it to 5 Super Bowls by the age of 29, which ties him with John Elway for the second most Super Bowl appearances by a quarterback. Only Tom Brady has more, with 10. And I'd argue that the top 3 quarterbacks in NFL history are Brady, Joe Montana, and Mahomes. While Mahomes did have his worst playoff game, let's not forget that Joe Montana once had such a rough outing in the 1987 divisional round against the Vikings that he was benched. He threw just 12 of 26 passes for 109 yards, including an interception returned for a touchdown. Yet Montana is still considered one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. After that rough Super Bowl loss, let's look back at some other legendary quarterbacks who've had their fair share of struggles in the playoffs. Take Joe Montana, for example. In the 1987 divisional round, he had a horrible performance against the Vikings, going just 12 of 26 for 109 yards, including a pick 6. Yet Montana is still regarded as one of the greatest quarterbacks in history, and the Vikings went on to win 36-24 in a huge upset. Then there's Tom Brady. In 2010, the Ravens crushed the Patriots in the wildcard round, jumping to a 24-0 lead. The final score was a brutal 33-14. Brady wasn't much help in this one, completing just 23 of 42 passes for 154 yards and throwing 3 interceptions. Despite Brady's poor performance, the Ravens quarterback Joe Flacco had a terrible game too. Just 4 completions on 10 attempts for 34 yards and an interception, but it was still not close. So yes, sometimes even the greatest quarterbacks have bad games in the playoffs. Don't let anyone tell you that Mahomes is the only one to struggle on the big stage. Some might argue that these losses happened in earlier rounds, like the wild card or divisional rounds, not the Super Bowl. But here's the thing. To even make it to a Super Bowl, you have to win playoff games first. That's how it works. Brady and Montana's poor performances kept their teams from making it to the Super Bowl that year, so take some comfort in knowing that even the best players in the game have their off days on national TV. Now let's talk about Travis Kelce. He addressed the Super Bowl loss on his podcast New Heights with his brother Jason. Kelce took responsibility for his part in the loss, saying he felt he could have done more as a leader and blocker. He acknowledged that the Chiefs couldn't find any momentum in the game, which prevented them from taking control. But of course, fans were eager to know whether Kelce might be retiring after such a tough loss. While he didn't give a definitive answer, he said he's not making any big decisions right now. For the moment, he's focusing on being there for his teammates and coaches. He also mentioned that, given all the success the Chiefs have had over the years, he's played a lot of football, especially deep playoff runs. And with that comes the inevitable wear and tear on the body. He said it respectfully, but it's clear that the grind of constant postseason play takes a toll. Travis Kelce also shared some insights into the toll that a long, successful career has taken on him. He talked about the grind of preparing and keeping his body in shape, spending so much time in the building to get ready for each season. It's not an easy process, and it can be mentally and physically draining. Kelce acknowledged that, this year, it was especially tough. He said it's difficult to deal with when you start feeling like you're not performing at the same high level you once did. It's a hard reality to face, and he's trying to figure out what's next. Kelce made it clear that he still believes he can play football, but he wants to make sure that, if he does continue, he's fully committed. He doesn't want to half-ass it, and that's why he's taking some time to decide. He's not rushing to make a decision, and as of now, everything is still up in the air. It's tough to read too much into his comments, especially so soon after the Super Bowl loss. His spirits are understandably low, but whether he decides to retire or keep playing is still a big question mark. If Kelce does retire, it wouldn't have a huge financial impact on the Chiefs. Based on the way his contract is structured, it would result in only $2.5 million in dead money, so the team could move forward without much of a financial burden. However, it would be a huge loss on the field. Kelce is widely regarded as the greatest tight end in NFL history, and finding a replacement for him would be nearly impossible. If he stays, his cap hit for next season would be $19.8 million. Some argue that this is too much for a 36-year-old tight end, especially when the Chiefs need to use their money wisely to address the weaknesses exposed in the Super Bowl. But here's the thing. Kelce has been underpaid for much of his career when you look at his production. Since 2013, he's led all tight ends in yards and touchdowns by a significant margin. And since 2018, when Patrick Mahomes became the starter, Kelce ranks third in receiving yards and fifth in receiving touchdowns among all NFL pass catchers. In fact, he's the only tight end in the top 12 of either category. If you compare his production to that of top wide receivers, you'll see that Kelce's numbers are on par with theirs. But those wideouts have made $25 to $35 million more over the course of their careers, and they're all younger than Kelce. So, if Kelce decides to play one more year, I'm all for him getting that $19.8 million. No one deserves it more than him. He's one of the greatest to ever play the game, and the Chiefs should do right by him as he nears the end of his career. Travis Kelce has been incredibly loyal to the Chiefs throughout his career, helping the team secure multiple Super Bowl rings and remaining consistently productive year after year, aside from his rookie season when he hurt his knee. However, I understand that this is a business, and it's possible that Brett V and the Chiefs front office could restructure Kelce's contract to lower his cap hit if he decides to keep playing. This could involve pushing some of the money into future years, which is something they've done in the past. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. If Kelce stays, should he take a pay cut, or should he get every penny he's earned with one of the biggest cap hits on the team? Speaking of money, Patrick Mahomes is set to have the third largest cap hit in the entire NFL for the 2025 season, a staggering $66.3 million. The only players with a higher cap hit are Dak Prescott and Deshaun Watson, which is a bit surprising given the mixed opinions on their performances. Regardless, even for a quarterback as successful as Mahomes, $66.3 million is an enormous number. The Chiefs will likely have to restructure his contract and convert some of that into bonuses, which they've done in previous years, to help alleviate the cap hit. But even with that, Mahomes will still carry the largest cap hit on the team by far. After Mahomes, the next highest cap hits belong to Chris Jones at $34.8 million and Jawaan Taylor at $27.4 million. It's unlikely the Chiefs will part ways with Taylor, especially since his cap hit is already substantial, and moving on from him next year would be possible but not ideal. So for 2025, Taylor will likely remain the right tackle. Following him, Joe Thuney has a similar cap hit, just under $27 million. And of course, Travis Kelce is in the mix with the fifth highest cap hit on the team. Right now, the Chiefs are 22nd in the league in cap space, with just $15.7 million available, meaning some moves will have to be made to free up more room. Priority number one for the 2025 roster should definitely be retooling or even rebuilding the offensive line. Joe Thuney is in the last year of his deal, and at 33 years old, he'll likely want an extension. If the Chiefs go that route, it could lower his cap hit for this season. Next up, Trey Smith is set to become a free agent, and he's likely going to command a massive contract. His projected market value is close to $20 million a year, and he could even reset the guard market. For reference, Landon Dickerson is getting $21 million annually, and Chris Lindstrom is making $20.5 million per year. Given all this, the Chiefs will have some tough decisions to make with their offensive line. Between Jawaan Taylor, Trey Smith, and Creed Humphrey, already the highest-paid center in the NFL, the Chiefs will have a lot of money tied up in the O-line. Balancing these big contracts while still addressing other needs will be a significant challenge for the team moving forward. The Chiefs' offensive line is not going to come cheap, especially if they extend Joe Thuney's contract. Plus, they still have a glaring need for a left tackle. If the team can't find the right player in the draft, there's a scenario where they end up paying for all 5 offensive linemen, which could eat up a significant portion of their cap space. But the offensive line isn't the only position that needs attention. The wide receiver room is looking thin, with Hollywood Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, Justin Watson, Mecole Hardman, and Juju Smith-Schuster all set to be free agents. Right now, only Rashee Rice and Sky Moore are on the roster. But Sky Moore is likely to be suspended to start the season, and with Rice still relatively unproven, the Chiefs could be in desperate need of reinforcements at wide receiver. The running back room also needs help. Both Kareem Hunt and Samaje Perine are free agents, so the Chiefs will need to bring in another running back to give Isaiah Pacheco some support. He can't be expected to carry the load on his own. On the defensive side, there are several key players set to hit free agency, including safety Justin Reid, linebacker Nick Bolton, and defensive end Charles Omenihu, among others. Even backup players like Turk Wharton and Joshua Kendo, who the Chiefs traded for but barely played, will be free agents, further adding to the list of positions that need attention. Brett Veach, the Chiefs' general manager, promised Patrick Mahomes that he would fix the offensive line after the Super Bowl loss to the Buccaneers in Super Bowl 55, and I believe he will do it again. But the big question is, how? One possibility is trying to keep Trey Smith, who's set to become a free agent. Alternatively, the Chiefs could ride with internal options like Kingsley Suamataia or C.J. Hansen. They could also try to bring in a left tackle through free agency, as it's generally easier to find a starting-level guard, either from within the roster or through the draft. The challenge with finding a quality left tackle in the draft is that the Chiefs typically draft at the end of each round, making it harder to land a top-tier talent. Fortunately, the Chiefs do have an extra third-round pick from the trade of cornerback L'Jarius Sneed, which could give them more flexibility. If the right left tackle falls far enough in the first round, they might be able to trade up and grab him. Additionally, there are a few veteran tackles available in free agency, assuming they aren't franchise tagged. Teams have a 15-day window to franchise tag one player starting February 20th, so we'll know soon enough. Keep an eye on names like Cam Robinson, Ronnie Stanley, Orlando Brown Jr., and DJ Humphreys. Humphreys even mentioned he'd love to return to Kansas City and get a full offseason under his belt with the team. There's a lot to think about here, and we'll dive into this further in future videos. But for now, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you'd like to see happen with the roster and the moves the Chiefs should make moving forward. When it comes to what the Chiefs should do with the offensive line, there are plenty of options to consider. Some may argue that paying Trey Smith and investing in a left tackle is the way to go, because as long as Patrick Mahomes has solid protection, the team will likely be set for deep playoff runs. Others might say it's better to let Smith walk and use that money to secure a top-tier left tackle. The priority, however, should always be protecting Mahomes' blind side. This would allow Joe Thuney, if he stays, to move back to his natural guard position and solidify the left side of the line, which will be crucial this season. Speaking of roster moves, the Chiefs have signed several players to reserve/future contracts. These contracts are given to players who are on the practice squad at the end of the season. They don't count against the salary cap or the roster limit until the start of the new league year in March. This also prevents them from negotiating with other teams during this time. Unsurprisingly, all 12 players who were signed to these contracts were part of the Chiefs' practice squad at the end of the season. Now, they'll get a chance to compete for a spot on the 53-man roster this upcoming season, though many may end up back on the practice squad. The 12 players signed are wide receivers, Jason Brownlee, Justin Ross, Laurel, and Taywan Thornton safety, Dion Bush, tight ends, Baylor Cupp, Anthony Farrer, defensive tackle, Sika, I apologize for the mispronunciation, and Fabian Lovett, offensive tackle. Jason Godric, quarterback, Chris Oken, cornerbacks, Darius Rush, and Eric Scott Jr. Some of these players could become key contributors or make a push for a roster spot, similar to how Justin Watson did when he was signed to one of these reserve deals a few years ago. More moves, including possibly some minor coaching changes, are likely to come soon. Rest assured, I'll keep you updated every step of the way throughout the offseason. Until next time,